Wilcoxes?
Um, well, Uncle Walt and Aunt Myrtle were Wilcoxes. Then there was the Carlsons, and then there was Uncle Maury and Aunt Cora were Wilcoxes, and they were related to those two were brothers. And then there was Aunt Sylvia and Uncle Bob Robison, and Aunt Sylvia was a Wilcox, and then Aunt Nina and Uncle Art, and they were related. The Peterson and Aunt Nina was a Peterson, and the Peterson and the Wilcoxes were related somehow. But they were all shirt-tail relatives and all members of the church. So it was a...
That means they probably all came down from Idaho, right?
Yeah, they all came down from Idaho. And there was good relationships, and we had a lot of fun with the group. Wilcox, the first Wilcox, Calvin, and he had a brother and a sister, younger. Calvin was a little younger than, he was probably Don's age. And then the Carlsons had a son older than myself, and then another boy Don's age, and Maury, Uncle Morris, Maury Wilcox, and Aunt Cora. They had 3 girls and a boy. And the boy's name was Richard. We called him Dick, and they all called him Baby Dick. I don't know why. He was a pretty good-sized kid. He was quite a bit younger than the rest than we were. But and then the Robinsons was Janie and Ed. Janie was my age, and Ed was Don's age. And we all went to church. Mary Jane and I were in MN and Gleaners, and the other kids were a bit younger at the time. So, and Janie was probably responsible for me meeting Mom, Dolores. Shortly before school started, my sophomore year, our age group had a beach party at Colorado Lagoon in Long Beach, and I went up with Janie and went down, and we had a lot of fun at the beach, at the lagoon, and met Dolores. We were both about chin deep in the lagoon, and we got to talking, and the group was going to swim across the lagoon, but I was not a swimmer. I could swim, but not with that capability. But your mom was, and she swam across, and I waited till she came back. And when they started out from the church, they were going to have a weenie roast, and they didn't have anything to roast the weenies with. And Mom's aunt lived just down the street, and so she went down to get some wire coat hangers that they could use to roast weenies on.
Which aunt was that?
Aunt Bernice.
Oh, okay.
Aunt Bernice. And they didn't have any... when she got back, they'd all left. Yeah. So Uncle Roy took her down. she and a girlfriend that was with her. He brought her down, or else she wouldn't have been there. But she didn't, under those circumstances, she didn't have her way home. And I was riding in a rumble seat of a Model A. And so we rode back home in the rumble seat of her. She rode back with us in the rumble seat of that Model A. And
Beth and Ruth were.
Ruth was not active in the church at all at that time. Beth was, but she was much younger than. She's a couple of years younger, and so she was not involved in that type of a situation. Then, of course, Mom really hadn't been active in church. I'd never seen her in church before. Then I started looking for her, and of course, when we started going together, why, at that particular time, they had Sunday school and priesthood, and then sacrament was 6 o'clock in the evening. So I would see her in Sunday school, and then I'd see her again in sacrament. And although I didn't sit with her, I always sat maybe behind her or so, you know.
Keep an eye on her.
So I could keep, yeah. And usually I walked her home. I would walk home with her. Of course, after I got when I got the car, we'd oftentimes go for a ride on Sunday afternoons and then go to sacrament in the evening. And that was a good excuse for getting together. We dated, and at the time, I spoke of the vacant lot next to 9 and Uncle Art. On the other side, the house on the other side of that vacant lot was a Latino family, and they had a stall at the produce market in town, and they hired a lot of kids in the neighborhood in the summertime to work down there. He watermelon and squash and those type of things. I never did that, but a relative of theirs had an old Model T truck that had been rigged up so he could carry fruit and vegetables on it. And I worked in the summer with him, going door to door to sell fruit and vegetables, and he'd give me a commission on what I sold. And then when school started, I worked with him on Saturdays, and he paid me $1 a day to work on Saturdays. For that $1, I could take Mom to the show, and we could each have a malt afterwards, and I had a dime left. Mm-hmm. The show was 35 cents, that's 70 cents, and then a dime for each of us a malt, and I had a dime left. But of course, then right after that, I started delivering papers again down here, and I made about $25 a month on that. But I was buying my own clothes and my spending money on that, and dating, and we used to go to the Palladium, out to the Casa Mañana, Wilshire Bowl, and we used to go to the Aragon down on, do you remember the Aragon?
The what?
Aragon. Stop banging the needle.
No, I've never heard of that before at all.
It was a dance hall out on the Santa Monica Pier. We went out there one night, and Grunion were running, And here are these girls in formals down on the beach trying to catch grunion. Silly. We used to go to the Pasadena Civic. The Palladium would have orchestras like shoot, what was his name? The fellow that was killed over in
Glenn Miller?
Glenn Miller. We'd have Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, Jimmy Dorsey, the trumpet player. Shoot. Well, all of those big name bands would go to the Palladium, and then after they'd been to the Palladium, they would spend one weekend at the Pasadena Civic. The Palladium was probably $2.50 to get in. The Pasadena Civic was 25 cents. You could get in there for 25 cents. And I know my buddy Lou Gherkins and I went one Saturday night, and your mom asked how come I didn't take her, and I said, because I only had a quarter. I didn't have enough to take. She said, well, I would have paid my own way to go out there, but not with me, she wouldn't. I'd never take a girl out and let her pay her own way. That's not the way you did things in those days. I guess they do it now, but
Yeah, they do it a lot now.
you sure didn't do it in those days. I had a girl in high school that wanted me to meet her in the theater. No. If I met her, if I had wanted to meet her, I would have taken her. Let's see, I only dated, I think, 3 other girls other than your mom. Remember Frank Shutt? I dated his sister, and he told his mom and dad it was okay she went with me because I was a straight arrow, whatever that meant. And then one time when your mom went to Utah, I took a gal to the junior prom, and then another gal asked me to the Sadie Hawkins dance, and that was another time your mom was out of town. She was out of school at that time. Your mom was out of school, but a gal asked me to Sadie Hawkins dance, and I went with her to that dance. But other than that, I figured any time I was out with somebody else, I wished I was out with your mom anyway, so why mess around?
Did she work at all while she was in high school? I don't think she did she?
No, she couldn't, Curt. She wasn't old enough. You had to be 18 to work. In fact, the year she graduated from high school, she went back to high school that fall and took some business courses because she was too young to go to work. When she turned 18, George Baker, who was a member of our ward and bishop at the time, was vice president in the Bank of America, and he was getting all these young kids jobs with the bank, and not only did he get her a job at the bank, but she was his secretary while he was bishop. She did a lot of typing and shorthand dictation and things like that for him, because she really was capable. She was good at shorthand, and she was good at typing, and of course it was to her benefit all through the years that she worked, because she held fairly decent jobs, office jobs, and doing secretarial work because she could take shorthand and was a good typist.
It's almost a lost art now.
Yeah, they don't. I'm sure that it is. If they do anything at all, they use transcription machines, and of course she could do that too. But she had fairly good grades all through school. She was carrying straight A's until we started going together, and then it kind of fell off. In fact, her dad asked me to stop coming around so often because of that. And once I started driving, I would drive up because I was too timid to go to the house. I would drive up and honk. And, he wouldn't let her come out. I had to come to the house. You don't come up to a girl's house and honk at her, and you come to the house. So he knows who she's going out with.
But you got over that in a hurry, didn't you?
I did. Oh yeah. We were, you know how they were with as far as card playing and so forth concerned. They'd gone out for a ride with Uncle John and the Naders, John and May, and they came home, and there was 4 or 5 of us sitting there playing cards, and he said, "What's going on around here?" Boy, you should have seen those guys take off. Louis and I were there, and Dolores and Beth and Ginger, who was Beth's girlfriend, and everybody took off, but I didn't. I stayed there. And he was just being funny with it, you know, but it sure scared the heck out of the kids. But they were good people, and Dolores often said that she thought I married her because of her mom, not because of her. But they were always good to me. Dolores and I took off, before we were married, took off one night to, after a company dance. It was over at midnight, and we took off for Tijuana. And while her folks knew we were doing it, they never said a word to me that they didn't want her to, or she couldn't go, or anything like that. And always felt good about that they felt that they could trust us, that we would behave ourselves.
That was after you graduated from high school, both of you?
Yeah, we had both graduated. Dolores graduated a year before I did.
How did that work out? Because you're the same age.
Yeah, when I was in Portland, I started at a half year. And when we moved from Portland to Milwaukee, there was no half year, so they set me back that half year, so that I lost that half a year there. And I don't know, I think Dolores, when Dolores came down from Utah, I think she was set up a half a year because of the difference in the different systems.
Well, yeah, you're right there. She was right there in Provo, and that had the benefit of the school, which was a teacher's college more than anything else at the time. So that's not surprising.
Yeah, she was a good student. That's probably where you kids got your brains from. You sure didn't get them from me.
Well, it's funny because if you look at her side of the family, there was no material wealth at all anywhere
No.
that I know of, and there was no education.
No, I don't.
There wasn't that much in yours either, other than your mom having gone to nursing school, and then maybe the Coattail relatives.
I don't think Mom's dad had a high school education. I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he didn't, and I don't know about. I don't recall with Grandma whether she had or not.
She finished the 8th grade.
And I don't know whether she ever. I don't think she ever did anything, because she never worked outside of the home.
Well, before she married.
Yeah, before she married, she was working. In fact, that's where she met Grandpa. She was working in a box factory in Salt Lake when they met. She was engaged to a guy who was on a mission and got married before. I guess she wrote him a Dear John. I don't know. We had in our dating experiences, we went to the beach a lot. We spent a lot of time during the summer at the beach because I had the paper route, and as far as money for gas and so forth was concerned.
How much was gas back then?
18 cents a gallon for gas. And I get 3 gallons for 50 cents. And they would check your tires and wash your windshield and vacuum your car out for 50 cents. And once in a while they'd have gas wars, and it would go down as, well, Larry said in Long Beach it'd go down as low as 9 cents a gallon for gas. I was reading a sign on the side of a gas tank the other day. Out of a gallon of gas, 46 cents is for taxes. So that's, while the price of gas is higher now than it used to be, or ever was as I grew up, a lot of that's not the price of gas as much as it is for taxes.
For the roads.
For the roads, yeah. And the bureaucracy on emissions control and things like that are involved with driving. The year that gas was so difficult to get, and I think it was 79, but don't remember exactly, but I used to argue with Bill, the guy I had insured, had his station insured and all, 32 cents a gallon, and I thought that was highway robbery. And now we're paying better than 3 times that much for it, so I guess at the time it wasn't such, it really was a bargain. And as you know, gas in Australia and all is much higher, so we're still getting it pretty cheap as far as the price of gasoline compared to what it is in other countries, England, France, Germany.
Yeah, it's $5 a gallon in Europe. It's even more than it is in Australia. It's
That's probably, if it's $5 a gallon, that's probably why they have the high-speed trains and a good transportation system by comparison to what we have here.
Countries. Taxes are high anyway.
Yeah.
But then with those taxes come a lot of benefits. You've got the entitlements that we don't have, like medicine and education, health care, family support, that kind of thing. Socialist countries. So.
Well, it's one way or another, it has to be paid.
Yeah.
And
those countries still have homeless people, but they're homeless by choice.
Yeah.
There are places for them to go.
Well, and I'm sure that there are people in this country that are homeless by choice.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
They're not happy with the what we consider the necessities of life. They don't like to be penned in.
Yeah, that's right.
And
can you let's talk a little bit about the church. What are your earliest recollections of the church, both in your family and as a social unit?
My earliest remembrances of the church is in Hood River. When we used to go to church, I remember there were two white families, and they were related. And that's Bob White's family, and the other one was the boy my age, probably my age, was Jerry White. And that guy was a pyromaniac. I always thought he was always playing with fire. I don't know what ever happened to them. But of course, Bob White's parents, Mom and his mother, were good friends, and Addie, and they were in close contact for a long time. Addie, incidentally, is still living. Up until just recently, I think she was still driving her car. She's now living in a retirement center, however, so in Salem, Oregon. It's doubtful to me that she's still driving. I wouldn't presume that
she's got to be close to 100 years old.
She's awfully close to 100 years old, I'm sure. My mom, I thought I don't remember if it was 1905 or 1895. I think it's 1895 that she was born, and Addie would be awfully close to that area. So, she's well up in years. I always admired her because she had 3 boys and 2 girls, and after she was divorced, she kept that whole family together and kept them at home. Addie was a fighter, and she always went to bat. The kids belonged to the YMCA and always had the use of the YMCA facilities, which in Portland was a nice facility. They had a gymnasium and a swimming pool and play pool and do all, the type of things that you do in those situations. And I was always a little envious of being able to do those kind of things that I wasn't, but yet I certainly can find no fault with my own mother, the way I was raised. I would have liked to have been with her and in a normal family situation. I want to turn it off. In Portland. Addie fought very hard for her children and her family. Number one, to keep them together, and number two, to see that they got the things that she thought should be available to them. She was a fighter, pretty perky little lady.
Probably why she's still alive.
Yeah, she and Mom were good friends, and they enjoyed. We used when we were at the home on the weekends that we could go with Mom. Periodically, we used to go. She would take us, and we'd go over to the Whites and spend the weekend with the Whites. And the boys slept with the boys, and Lois slept with the girls, and we slept crossways in the bed. So there was 4 of us in the bed. We slept crossways in the bed. Well, we were just kids, just youngsters, just little kids. Yeah, 7, 8 years old. And
how much younger is Bob than you?
Bob's a couple of years. There's he may be 3 or 4 years younger than I am. He had an older brother who was about my age, and then one that was probably Lois's age, and then another one a little younger. His older brother may have been a little older than me, and I was a little older than his middle brother, and then he was the youngest boy, and there were 2 girls, Noreen and can't think of the other girl's name. I don't remember the other girl's name. Edna May. Noreen and Edna May.
How did Lois and Bob get together?
Lois and Bob, Bob was career service. He had been married before. I think had children. I don't know that he had children by his first wife. I don't know that. But of course, he and Lois had the 2 girls. I don't know. He came around the house after the war was over. Sis was going with an optometrist at the time. May or may not have been a happier situation for her, but he told her, if being in the service, they traveled, and she liked that. And they did. She went back on the West Coast. The kids were born on the West Coast, and Mom went back to see her when the children were born and stayed with her. And when he got out of the service, I was in the hearing aid business then, would like to have had him stay and work with me at the time. He would have done a good job with that. I don't know, it's a tough business for me to handle alone, I guess, to make a living out of. I don't know what we'd have done with 2 of us, but he went to Oregon at the time. I thought that if they'd have stayed down here, I could have gotten him active in the church and
got him off the spot.
Got him to stay sober, but drinking was a problem with him. And so their marriage broke up, and Lois came home. I don't recall what year that was. But Bob was a nice kid, a really nice kid. You couldn't have asked for a better person when he was sober. But I guess when he got drunk, he got mean. So
we've talked about the Warriors yet. We have. I mean, we've got a tape of that. So we probably need to pick up about the time you got out of service.
When shortly before the war, number of our friends, Bob and Gail, and Doug and Leora Winters, and there were 2 or 3 other couples, Wally and Carol Grant, and there was another couple, I can't think of her name. She was both of them. He was blonde-headed and she was blonde-headed. Nice kids. But these people were all getting married, and we were headed in that direction. In fact, we were engaged, and I was still making payments on the car, and I really wasn't making a heck of a lot of money. In fact, I was working in a drawing room as a draftsman. I had, after I graduated from high school, I enrolled in Frank Wiggins Trade School. I got a job with Thompson Products, working in their heat treat room, and it was swing shift. So I could, I'd get home from work about 11, get off at 11, get home about 11:30. Off times went by and picked Dolores up, and we'd go have a hamburger or something, and get to bed, and then get up in the morning and go to school. I went to school from 8 to 12, and came home, and I used to go by and Grandmom's folks didn't have a car, so I would take Graham's shopping. They were on one of those kind of deals where you went to the market and charged it all, and then came around on payday and paid it off, and then the next week drummed up another bill. And I got him off of that so that I would pick her up and take her to the supermarket where she could get more groceries for her money. And we got them off of that. Then I would go home and lay down and sleep for an hour and a half before I had to go to work. And I was working for Thompson Products in the heat treat department, and then going to Frank Wiggins Trade School to learn drafting. And then I went into the drafting room and was working days, and of course then I had a little more of a social life with your mom, and so we decided to get married. We'd set a date for November, and I broke the engagement because I didn't feel like I was making enough money to support a family, for one thing, and I was still making payments on a car, which were $25 a month, but I was only making $100 a month. And I just couldn't see that we could live on that type of wage. Well, when we got married, when Pearl Harbor came along, we made some definite decisions to do, and I'm happy that I did, because I'm not sure that maybe while I was gone she might have met somebody else, a serviceman, or because there was a lot of service men in the Los Angeles area, USO and other programs that would have given her an opportunity to have met, and may have given me an opportunity in the service to have met someone else, and just like fellows going on missions where their girlfriends meet somebody and changes both their lives, really. So I'm happy that we were married when I went into the service. When I when we got married, they gave me a $25 raise, which was 25% at the time, which was a pretty hefty raise because working in the shop, when they union went for a raise at that time, it was 2 and 3 cents an hour. Today they go for $4 and $5 an hour raise, but at that time it was 2 or 3 cents an hour, and that $25 raise was a pretty hefty raise.
What did they do? I mean, what did they make?
They made valves, aircraft valves and ship valves, huge big valves for ships.
Could you have? Yeah, I've seen you've got some chrome-plated ones around.
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Could you have gotten a military deferment because of that?
I don't think so. What happened, Lou Gherkins and I were both getting pretty close to a draft situation. Right out of high school, in fact, I hadn't graduated from high school yet when one of my buddies, Wally Donahue, was in the Naval Reserve, and he talked me into going in to join the Naval Reserve, which was on a Monday night. They met on a Monday night, and I went in and applied, and on the physical, the corpsman said, "I think you have a hernia. You have to come back and see the doctor, lieutenant," which would have been the following Monday. Sunday night, I got one of my buddies, Chuck Chester, quit his job as an usher in a theater and asked me if I wanted the job, and I said sure. So I went down to see the guy, and I got the job. And so I never went back to the Naval Reserve. So Lou Gherkins and I went, after the war started, Lou Gherkins and I went down and enlisted in the Air Corps for cadets, for cadet training. I figured if I had a hernia, number one, they would either fix it or they would make me 4F. I didn't have a hernia, and was enlisted in the Air Cadet Corps. We did this in October, and they did not call us until February.
Of
1943. I went down, I called to see if it would be okay if I left the state to go up and see my dad, and they said, "Your orders are in the mail right now, so you'll be ordered to report where and when." And I got them and called Dad, and I met him in Sacramento, and we spent the weekend there with him, and we went out he drove up to Gridley to see his mother and to see
yeah, I think that's on the other tape.
my grandmother. And,
That's on the other tape, yeah.
but the funny part of it was, Lou Gherkins, they found a heart murmur on him, and they wouldn't accept him. And he joined the Coast Guard, spent the war patrolling with a horse and a dog on Pismo Beach. So
rough life, huh?
he was home weekends. And
where's Pismo Beach at?
Pismo Beach is along the coast up towards, I think it's up above San Luis Obispo, in that general area along the
Beautiful
coast there. Nice area, yeah. Nice area. Phil Harris used to joke all the time about Pismo Beach, digging clams on Pismo Beach. It was quite interesting because Lou was a real fan of Phil Harris, so it seemed kind of odd that he'd be going to Pismo Beach. Lou was not married. He married shortly after he got out of the service. He and his wife used to stop by once in a while. They came by, I don't know, one weekend they'd been out to dinner and probably stopped by our house for coffee. And you know what happens at our house with regard to coffee. So as they were leaving, she remarked, "You folks don't drink coffee, do you?" And he said, "No, we don't." And then the big light above my head, that's probably what they came by for. They never came by again. Lou retired. When he retired, he went to Santa Rosa. They were supposed to have come over to visit us one time, and Lou was extremely ill and couldn't make it. And Mary Ellen and I were going up the coast at one time, and we stopped and called, and they weren't available, so we've just made no effort to contact them since. Lou was a good...
What about the Schutz? They used to live next door to Beth and Bill.
Yeah, they lived on the same street that